Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1729.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm back across the pond in Gloucester in the United Kingdom with a very special guest by the name of Clive Neville. Hey, Clive, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I certainly am, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll have some fun here. Now, before I give you a proper introduction and we dive into my questions, I'd love for you to share one little thing with my listeners that maybe most people don't know about Clive Neville.
You mean things that are printable, I take it?
Well, it's a family-friendly show, but you can share whatever you'd like.
I think the only thing that people may not know about me is that perhaps now I'm a bona fide author.
Yes, you are. Big time. It only took about 8 years, though, right?
Yeah, indeed so, but people didn't really think it was ever going to happen.
Did you ever think it was going to happen?
No, I wrote it in 2011 and it only took a year to do all of the research. But the finalization with Rick to get it all together, to get all of the imagery and to get a publisher took an awful long time. And we had challenges along the way in terms of illness and work. And so I did think at some point it wouldn't happen, but it did. And I'm very grateful for everybody who helped us with it.
Well, listen, we automotive enthusiasts are extremely grateful, and I'm one of them for your time today. Listeners, let me give you a proper introduction for Clive here, and you'll understand what we're talking about. Clive Neville is a writer, and now he's an author who spent his youth wrapped in the fog of the 70s, where he found a liking for long hair, music, cars, and motorbikes. He's had many motorbikes and cars pass through his garage throughout his life, and with a long career in the civil service as a writer, including briefings for government ministries, Clive adapted a style and has written a book titled The Light Car Company Rocket, The Singular Vision of Two Men. Published by my friends at Porter Press International in the United Kingdom, it is a full history of a fascinating machine that changed the sports car market and the brainchild of former racing driver Chris Kraft and design genius Gordon Murray. According to Clive, it was a story that had to be told, especially since Clive has owned a rocket. The book's designer was Rick Ward, who you'll remember is a past guest here on Cars Yeah. We're going to learn a lot more, but first a word from our valued sponsors. So sit tight, Clive, keep your seatbelts on. We'll be right back to talk more about this book in your life. Hang on. Do you have a pet in your household that loves to go for rides? Our pets are part of our families, but they can be very hard on your vehicle's interior. Covercraft offers a wide variety of solutions to protect your vehicle from Fido's rough treatment. Canine cargo area covers are padded for comfort and provide door-to-door protection. Pet pads have built-in features that keep cargo areas and seats protected. Covercraft's quality pet solutions cover cargo areas, bucket or bent seats, and protect from damaging claws, pet fur and hair, mud, moisture, and drool from permanently damaging those fine finishes on your vehicle's interiors. Choose from a variety of styles and covers for almost every vehicle that's made. And here's something I've got just for you and for Fido. Use the code YEAH120 at covercraft.com and you'll get 10% off your Covercraft pet protection order. That's right, 10% off. That'll make Fido happy. Simply use the code YEAH120, YEAH120 at checkout. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. And Fido too. American Collectors Insurance, that's how I now protect my Porsche Turbo, the one I call my Orange Crush. Are you insuring your classic vehicles on your regular daily driver auto policy? Then your special vehicles are at risk. Your regular auto insurance carrier won't tell you how much you'll get until after a claim, and more than likely, you'll be in for a rude awakening. With agreed value policy from American Collectors Insurance, you'll be paid your vehicle's full agreed value. No surprises. If you're driving your collector car less than 5,000 miles a year, Do what I did. Call American Collectors Insurance and get your very own agreed value policy tailored to your specific vehicle. If you're like me, you're picky about who works on your special ride. A great policy allows you to choose your repair shop of choice, and that means you'll know the job is done right. I shopped around and decided to protect my car with American Collectors Insurance. They've been protecting vehicles since 1976. Give them a call for a quote today at 866-ACI. Yeah, that's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love. I did at American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. All right, Clive, we are back. And as we continue on this journey that I'm going to call your life, I would love for you to share a success quote or a mantra, some kind of saying, you're a wordsmith, that has meaning for you in your life. It's a nice way to get those rocket wheels spinning here on Cars Yeah. So, Clive, grab the wheel.
Yeah, well, I found this a difficult question. Being a civil servant, I probably didn't have one because I fell into being a civil servant. And I suppose when I thought about it, my mantra is don't get caught out was my main one. Because my dad said the same to me when I spoke to him about it. I always felt that perhaps I was doing better than I really should have done. And the other one, perhaps, is not getting into debt. Other than that, I don't have a personal mantra. It's basically ones which are more trying to avoid problems rather than becoming successful.
Well, both of those mantras, I'll call them, or sayings, are definitely ways to avoid problems. Don't get caught out and don't get into debt. I think those are pretty good ways to go through life. Let me ask you this, Clive. Don't get caught out. How do you relate that to your life and what you've done in your life?
Well, I think, as you might have seen from the end piece on the Rocket book, I tried to send myself up to a degree. I think I'm probably better than I set myself to be. But with work, I was doing some quite important things as a civil servant, doing a lot of international negotiation with other countries, including America and European ones. And it's quite daunting. And I thought, bloody hell, am I really doing this? I still only feel 17. But actually, I was 55 or whatever, and I was actually quite good at it. But in the back of my head, I was saying, I shouldn't really be here. But clearly I was.
Well, I'll tell you, communicating through the written word is a very special skill. My son does that. And being able to especially translate that to different countries, which involve different mindsets, even the difference between the English, the proper English that you speak, and the rough English we speak over here across the pond, something we borrowed from you folks. You know, sometimes you can say something to somebody from another country, and it can really come across as completely different than the way you meant it to be. So is that how that don't get caught out kind of ties to you? Did you have to be really careful the way you crafted these words?
Yes, I think from the perspective of work, it was impressed upon me by a lot of consultants and others who help us to negotiate is that the British particularly, but maybe also the Americans, but less so, we use the language in a way which is very blurred. The British particularly do not show emotions, and if they want to say something awkward to another nation, what will happen is that they'll try and say, we like that, but blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, the nation who receives it just says, you like it.
Yes.
And we use language which is deliberately flowery to avoid the confrontation that we don't like. And it's actually awkward. Therefore, I learned particularly to be quite, not hard, but certainly firm and understandable when discussing bits and pieces. In the book, it's easier because it's predominantly for a British audience, and it was a hobby thing to do rather than something which might involve nations doing something else for somebody else over time, which would stand in perpetuity.
I find this really fascinating because one of the things that I've always mused about is that when talking with a British person who is not so happy with you, they can pretty much tell you they're not happy with you, but they sound like they're complimenting you.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes.
And you kind of walk away going, did I do something wrong? I think I did, but maybe not. And I'll tell you another part of this, Clive, that I find very fascinating. I talk to a lot of people. You're my 1729th guest here on Cars Yeah. And I talk to people all over the world, and I learned very early on, one of my questions that we're going to get to today is what I call my challenge question. I get a guest to share a challenge or a failure they've faced. And I found early on with guests from the UK, they did not want to answer that question. And I had a guest on who was a race car driver, and I said, I kept pushing him. And he finally pushed back, and he said, Mark, he said, we Brits do not like to talk about our failures like you do. You Americans almost revel in failure. We don't.
Okay, well, I think that Brits may have a stiff upper lip, but there are others who don't and are quite happy to acknowledge that they are human after all.
But I found it very interesting. But isn't that part of life? And what you got to do by writing as a civil servant and communicating with people all over the world, walk that very delicate balance between the written word and what you mean by it and how it could be perceived.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. When writing in that, and in fact I was instrumental for writing a treaty, you have to be perfect in terms of what you mean, because it will then set out what you have to do.
Oh, gosh. Yes. Treaties. Oh, my goodness. Well, and this is why countries seem to get in arguments all the time. And you stand back and go, why are we fighting each other? I don't understand. We're just humans. We just want our families to be safe and sound. And here we are. Well, let's dive into this book. And I appreciate you taking me down that path. The Light Car Company. This is a wonderful book titled The Light Car Company Rocket, The Singular Vision of Two Men. Now, when I had your cohort, the designer of the book, on the show, I've learned a lot more about this company than I did before. And then having the book here, it's just a fascinating read, but it is a massive undertaking. And for a first book, boy, you dove in head first, didn't you?
Yes, indeed. I suppose I did. But the genesis of all of this was that obviously I had a rocket, and a very good friend of mine had one too. And, Gordon and Chris were in their, late 60s, early 70s at the time. And we thought, and the car was 20 years old at that point. And we thought, we must do something about this. So my friend Nick said to me, go and pick up all of the archive that Chris has got and try and catalogue it so that we've got something for the future. Anyway, that didn't happen. What did happen, though, was that, perhaps I should write a book about it instead, and got Chris involved, and he's very happy to give me all of the material that he had. And obviously spoke to Gordon and all of the other participants in the car's manufacture and development. And I was able to piece together the story. And I think what was important for this particular little car, which some people have heard of but probably never seen, was that it was something that had to be told because it had a really human element to it. It wasn't a perfect thing. It's not a big corporate thing. And it wasn't done perfectly. But at the same time, they ended up with a fantastic piece of engineering.
It's absolutely fascinating to me, and I was not very much aware of this vehicle. Now, it's similar in some ways to the Ariel Atom, which we see over here in the States, or the Caterham, Lotus 7. I mean, some of these vehicles that have some kind of a relationship, but this is... The background is absolutely fascinating. Now, you're a person who had one, so describe to my listeners who maybe have not seen what we're talking about. You can Google it. You can learn a lot that way. The book is really the way because it dives deep into the history of the development, the process of this vehicle. But describe what the vehicle is to you in a way and how much fun it must have been to drive one.
I think the comparisons with the cars that you mentioned, including the Atom and the Caterham, are sort of half right. I think we've got to remember with the rocket, it was 2/3 of the weight of even an Atom. It didn't use a car engine, it used a motorcycle engine. It used innovative techniques, which only Gordon Murray could think of because of his ability to look out of the box and to produce a car which was incredibly light. And it was the first of the cars which used a motorcycle engine, because some do now. Mm-hmm. But it was the ability to produce something which had quite a lot of horsepower, but not a great amount, 150 bhp, but in a chassis that weighed 380 kilograms.
Oh, God.
And as a consequence, had the sort of acceleration of a Murcielago. And not the top speed, it would run out about 135, but because of the gearing and the drag, but nevertheless, something which was colossal. And I, as an owner for 11 years of one of these things, I still cannot get over the energy that the car had, despite being so light. Beautifully balanced, ability to go around our knackered old British roads, but still have a great ride, and the handling was sublime. But what was really good was that the ride was excellent. It didn't bump around because the suspension was so accurately poised. But the other thing about it is that you're driving along and you're doing about 4,000 revs and you're thinking, oh, we're getting along now. And then you're getting to 6,000 and you say, oh, better change up, it's getting a bit noisy. And then you say, no, let's do it at 8. No, let's not do it at 8, let's do it at 11.5. And the kick from 8 to 11.5 was such as though you'd been just drop kicked out of a football ground.
Yes.
It was astonishing to the extent that you think, I'm not going to survive this too much.
Yes. I rode a MB Agusta F4 motorcycle that revved to 14,000 RPM. And typically in the street, you'd ride it up to 7,000, 8,000 RPM. And it was scary fast. And I took it on the track for the first time. And that range that you're talking about there, that upper level range, it was a whole nother bike. It's like getting on cam in a race car or a hybrid sports car. It turns into another beast that you just go, what on earth did I just do?
Yes, indeed. But the Augusta was another generation beyond the Yamaha RX-Up engine used in the Rocket, because the Rocket is a 30-year-old car in terms of its design. It was using the best engine they had at the time.
Yep.
But since then, 1,000cc engines have got another 3,000 RPM on the clock, going up to 40 rather than 11.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. It's pretty much like driving a race car on the street, right?
Yes, yeah, and as awkward sometimes. The clutch is particularly difficult. And most people say, oh, don't worry, it's a clutch, I can sort that out. And they can't. They always stall it. Everybody, including people who think they know better. Mm-hmm. But you do get used to it after a while. The issue is the fact that the drive is taken up in the last 2 millimeters of the pedal's travel. And Gordon Murray didn't, on this, change the ratios from the master cylinders to give it a bit more leeway in the travel. So low torque, more biting point means stall.
Yeah.
Until you get used to it.
Oh, exactly. I raced vintage cars for years, and then jumping into a vintage Formula One car and trying to pull it out of the paddock is nerve-wracking because it's the same thing. You stall it every time until you finally figure out what is that balance going. Now, this project was monumental. Not only your first book project, but compiling all the data and then somehow putting it into this story format. I always ask my guests about challenges. Let's talk about a challenge with this book. What were some of your biggest challenges of putting this together? And then you talked at the beginning about how long it took because of all sorts of different things that came into play. Yeah, well, I'm going to just turn that around slightly. I think that the book was a real pleasure to do. I had the time of my life. I mean, I am or was a fairly normal civil servant doing things in the international sphere, but I got the opportunity to speak to some really interesting people, including Gordon Murray and Chris Kraft and others, and including Jay Leno, who kindly rang me up at work one day. That was quite an interesting thing. 7:30 in the office, and then I get a call on my mobile and it said, it's Jay here. I went, Jay? Yeah, Jay Leno, do you want to do it? And I think, yes, okay. And I spent the next 45 minutes speaking with him. Nice.
But in terms of challenge, it was trying to ensure that the book did the story justice and that we created in a way that followed the book on the McLaren F1 driving ambition, and also that it looked good. And that took a while to get it right, but it was all there in the end.
Now, working with Rick, he spoke so highly of you, of what you handed to him, try to then take all this and make it look pretty as a graphic designer. You're the wordsmith. How was that collaboration? Was it fun to work with him, or did you pretty much say, here are the words, go have fun?
No. It was a good collaboration. I mean, what I did at the beginning was obviously did the words, but I gave him a framework, slavishly copied from Driving Ambition. I have to say, I wasn't really that innovative. I just said, this is what I'd like to do. These are the pictures I'd want in the various positions. And then Rick did that and developed it and then added the colour to it, which he does so beautifully by including shadows and putting the pictures in such a way, much more than I would have done. So that worked really well. The issue, I suppose, is we were trying to find more and more pictures which were different. One of the slight criticisms I've read of my book in reviews is that it's a bit samey. There are a lot of pictures of rockets, and I'd have to agree. But on the book on the rocket, there isn't much else you can do apart from pictures of rockets or indeed their creators. And there are only 47 of them, and so you can't take many pictures of them without having a repetition. So it was a struggle, but I was very fortunate in that Jay Leno took pictures of his car. The Gordon Harrison, the Beatles estate, took pictures of his, and others who are mentioned in the book, also did that. And they gave it to me free of charge. And I'm very, very privileged for that.
Absolutely. What was your favorite part of this project?
It has to be the writing, because that's what I do. Once I got into the flow, it was a great thing to do. But as part of that, it was also having time with Chris Craft. He's always a fun person, and he made it so interesting and easy to do, as did Gordon Murray when I interviewed him on a couple of occasions. Absolutely fantastic time. Couldn't have it better.
Yes, Gordon, a genius for sure. His legacy, icon.
But ethical and very generous too.
Yes. Well, let's take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk about your personal passion for cars, Clive. I mean, you had one of these vehicles for a long time. You got to be a car guy to have something like this and to keep it for a while. So sit tight, keep those seatbelts tight. We'll be right back. Let's step away from the conversation to talk about our charity of choice here at Cars Yeah, America's Automotive Trust. America's Automotive Trust is a group of like-minded nonprofits that are working together to preserve and promote car culture across the country. Together, they provide scholarships and grants to aspiring technicians and restoration artists. They provide youth education programs and bring communities together through automotive-related events, car shows, and drives. Among those nonprofits is RPM Foundation, a terrific organization working to keep our favorite collector cars on the road. RPM was created to ensure that the specialized skills needed to care for classic automobiles, boats, and motorcycles continue to be passed down from generation to generation. They do this by supporting training for young people with a passion for restoration and setting them up with mentors who can share their valuable knowledge. So far, they've awarded more than $3.5 million to restoration education projects across 35 states. Incredible! To learn more about RPM or to donate to their mission, visit www.rpm.foundation. You'll be glad you did. Kevin Buckler is a winning racer and team owner of the Racers Group. He has over 100 professional wins, multiple wins at the 24-Hour of Daytona, and a win at Le Mans. Kevin realized the racing world is about the people and founded Adobe Road Winery. He and his team have created a winning combination with the Racing Series, 4 ultra-premium red wine blends that are in a class of their own with a racing twist. Just like in racing, these wines comprise of art, precision, engineering, science, superb taste, all blended together with a whole lot of fun. There are 4 carefully crafted blends with race-inspired names: Redline, Apex, Shift, and the 24. When you purchase all 4, you get the entire lineup in a beautifully designed gift box. There's a printed description of the blends inside the box lid, and every bottle is parked in a protective, die-cut placeholder. The bottles feature 3-dimensional labels, and I promise you'll want to keep them after enjoying these delicious wines. The box is so cool, you'll want to keep it too. The Racing Series is a killer gift for the automotive enthusiasts in your life, and I have a deal for you. If you use the code CARSYEAH, all one word, all caps, at checkout, you'll get $10 off any purchase of wine from the Racing Series. Your wine ships promptly and arrives quickly. Use the code CARSYEAH at checkout for $10 off on your purchase today. There's always a seat at the table for excellence with the Racing Series. Go to adoberoadwines.com and use the code CARSYEAH today to get your deal. Cheers. All right, we're back. I would love for you to share a story that instigated your personal passion for cars. A pivotal moment in your life when you knew, you know what? I'm a car guy.
Yeah, well, I think like many guys, particularly here, my enthusiasm for cars started with toy cars on the floor as a 5-year-old, driving them around the carpet. And then following that, the Scalextrics slot car racing and making model cars for myself when I was perhaps 10, going on to 12, 14 or so. Then at school, when I became 16, I really became bikey. I loved motorcycles, and I got motorcycles, but mainly because cars were out of my reach. I couldn't afford them. I wouldn't have been able to use them anyway because I wouldn't have had the money. So I bought bikes, and it wasn't until about when I was 22 that I realized that as I was at work at that point, I needed something to get around which didn't make me a rocker to my work colleagues. And I decided that I would buy cars, and that's what I did. But because, again, not a particularly rich person at that time, I bought what I could, and my first car was my grandmother's Ford Escort, which is the car below the Ford Mondeo of the time, so quite a small little saloon car with a 1300 engine, which had about 45 bhp and wouldn't go up hills. So that was a challenge. But I suppose for me, it was then that didn't give me any enthusiasm. Bikes were much better. I had Kawasaki turbos at the time, and it was much better. But then I bought a Lancia, which, as you probably know, is an Italian marque.
Yes.
And I bought an HP 2000IE in 1983. And for me, that was really cool. It was a beautifully built but prone to rust car. It wasn't that old. And at the time, guys in Britain had what were called Ford Escort XR3Is, which had a 1600 engine. And here I was, an Italian thoroughbred with a 2000 injected engine.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, here it is. I mean, I've hit the big league. And then I wanted cars from then onwards.
No doubt. Well, thanks to England and Matchbox by Lesney, that's what started it for me. In fact, I still have my first Matchbox by Lesney my father bought me at the hardware store. A nice red, shiny Jaguar XKE Coupe. So, wow. Sits here on my desk and reminds me of my youth and my hundreds of other Matchbox, which I've never let go. They're back there in a closet. Maybe if I'm ever blessed with grandchildren, they can play with those someday. But of course, they're all perfect, so I probably will be that crazy grandpa that says, look, don't touch. I sure hope not. Maybe I can.
Oh, yes. Well, I've got 5 left, one of which is a Chevy station wagon, a really early Lesney one.
Is that the one with the top that slides back and forth?
No, it's not. No, it's green with a red roof. It doesn't have windows. It was the one that before they had interiors.
Oh, okay. Wow, that is an early one.
So it's early, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Chip.
Well, I always ask about my guest's first special vehicle. Obviously, the Rocket had to be pretty special for you. Is that what you would consider your first special vehicle? I'm guessing that the Ford Escort's not, but the Lancia could be. That's a cool car.
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit... because you said first special vehicle.
Yes.
I thought about not ones that I've got now, but ones which were special to me. And it doesn't have to be because it's a nice car particularly.
Right.
I'm going to take the Lancia out of the equation because I didn't have that very long, because unfortunately after about a year and a half, a Volvo estate took it off the road.
No.
But it would have rusted anyway, Mark, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But actually, the most memories I have is in a car called a Talbot Samba. Now, those in the United Kingdom will be going, a Talbot Samba. That's a shed, isn't it, Clive? It's a rubbish car that was produced as a cheap hatchback. And I'd have to agree, it was. But in 1989, having had a motorcycle accident, I needed a car. And I bought a Talbot Samba Cabriolet, which was actually quite a nice little Pininfarina conversion of the car, with a 1400 twin-carb engine, very lightweight. And I had that car for 31 years, and it's still in the garage now.
31 years?
I've had it 31 years, yes.
Oh, my God.
And it's still as cute as ever, and the build quality is shocking, but because it's led a pampered life, and I was the second owner, it hasn't rusted like all of its counterparts. There are 16 left in the United Kingdom. There's probably a few more in France, as it was a French car. But for me, that has taken me around France, it's taken me around Spain, and the most of its 50,000 odd miles have been done abroad. And it has given me so many memories. And as a consequence, that has to be my first special vehicle.
What year would that be? It
was a 1986 car. So it was effectively a Peugeot 104 in a different bodysuit.
Okay. Now I know it. Okay.
Run into the 205.
Talbot. Talbot.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Very much kind of like a Golf.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very,
The Cabriolet was in the same market as the first Golf Cabriolet.
Okay. I wonder now, related to the French vehicle, and it was built in France, right?
It was built in France, yes. It was a French car, yeah.
Who was you look at the design of that car, and it sure looks a lot like like that Golf design. I mean, a lot of cars in that era, the hatchbacks were the kings, right? Everybody was making them. Do you know who the designer was on that vehicle?
The Talbot Samba was a development of the Peugeot 104, and it was done in-house by Talbot engineers in Poissy in Paris. But the conversion to the cabriolet was done by Pininfarina.
Okay.
Who did all of the cabs at that time.
It has that essence to it. And I had in college, my first new car was a Volkswagen Scirocco first edition of that car, which kind of had a little bit of the same essence to it, although that was a Jario design.
Yeah.
But a beautiful little car. They all rusted away too, though. So the way it was. Fascinating. Well, you're the only person out of 1,700 plus people that named that vehicle. So that's pretty cool.
I think anybody else would, Mark. But if you wanted something special, it is for me. And we took it to Spain only 2 years ago. And apart from the fact that you do notice lack of power steering when you've had power steering for 30 years, it still was quite good. It's quite peppy. And it did let us down. It did break down at the end. But she's an old lady, and it was a very easy fix. So we got there and got back.
I think it's pretty cool you still have it. That's pretty neat. Few people can say that about a vehicle. Now, I'm going to crawl into your head a little bit here, Clive. Bit of an introspective question. If you woke up tomorrow and you were manifest as a vehicle, not what you want to be, but how you perceive your personality in a vehicle, what would Clive Neville be? And more importantly, why?
Right. I think I would probably be that Talbot Samba Cabriolet.
Okay.
I can't see myself being an Aston Martin or a Ferrari. Not even a rocket. I'm not that sort of person. And I'll tell you why I think that I could be a Talbot Samba Cabriolet.
Yep.
It's a bit eccentric and left field as a choice, and I think probably I am. It's very nimble on its feet. It doesn't carry any excess baggage. It's lightweight, a bit like me again. And it doesn't try too hard to look cool, but I think somehow pulls it off sufficiently. I'm not saying I do it effectively, but sufficiently. And because people, when I go in that car, and perhaps they don't do that with me, but when I go in the car, people go, look at that. We haven't seen one of those. Isn't that cute? And perhaps I'm slightly cute, especially now with my COVID long hair, which it's not normal, I have to say. And also, I think it can laugh at itself, but can hang out with the big guys if it wishes to, because I don't really have any, I'm quite self-deprecating. But in terms of the Talbot, I remember taking it on a run with the UK Porsche Club, because I was a member of the Porsche Club at that time. Mm-hmm. And I took it because I thought, I'm going to show them my little car as well as my other car. And we were on windy roads of Britain, and it was going really well. And taking it to the max, obviously, because I only had 80 brake horsepower. But I was. And it was rolling around, as it does, because it's French, but it was holding to the road like a limpet. And everybody was saying afterwards, wow, that was quick. And perhaps that's a bit like me. Sometimes it can be a bit surprising.
Well said, my friend. Great answer. One of my favorites. What's one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your successes in life?
I don't know. That was a really difficult question because I think I'm a bit of a quandary in many respects. Part of me is incredibly ordered and wants to have everything just so. But at the same time, I'm all over the place in other respects, just ask my wife. Yeah. So I don't think that I have anything which I can say personal habits which make it very... I probably think most of my habits are not that great.
Maybe it's the balance of the two that somehow evens you out a little bit. So
maybe. But
maybe we'll bring your wife into the play at the end of this talk and we'll see what she has to say about it. Or maybe not. I'm not sure I want my wife to get involved in that either. If you could have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive industry, either living or someone who's passed, who would it be?
Having had the pleasure of having conversations with Chris Kraft and his family from 2008 to now, it would have to be Chris again, because he is the master of the anecdote. His life has been so interesting, from being a developer in London, losing all his money, making it again, developing the rocket, being a racing driver, living life to the max.
Yes.
He always has stories to tell, and I could listen to them forever.
Yes, magnificent. When it comes to automotive advice or motorbike advice, what's the best advice someone else has ever offered to you?
I don't think I've received any. Perhaps it would have been, Mark, if they'd said it. Don't sell your rocket.
Yes. Yeah, I've got a few vehicles that I wish somebody had said that to me as well. Yeah, they do slip out of our hands for a variety of reasons. But do you know who owns your old rocket?
I do, yes. I'm familiar with the new owner,
Okay.
and with lots of the other owners, obviously, as a consequence of writing the book. But I'd had it for 11 years, and somebody else needed to have the joy of driving one, I think.
Yeah, with as few of those that exist, definitely.
Exactly right. Yes.
Very kind of you, Clyde. Thanks for doing that. Now, when it comes to resources, today we have unimaginable resources from when you and I were children, if only. What's one of a favorite go-to for you? Maybe a website you find yourself on, a supplier, an app?
I look at websites, a fora that link to cars that I have or are interested in, particularly to see what you need to do X, Y, or Z to the car. And I find those very useful. I suppose the thing that I do try and avoid, though, with those is that I don't try and look too deeply at all the things where they say there's a problem with the car or this, or the. Otherwise, you'll be so depressed that you bought something because you think it will blow up immediately.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it gets a little bit too crazy. You just ignore all of that for sure.
Indeed.
I always ask my guests if there's a favorite book. Obviously, we're going to be mentioning and listing your book, The Light Car Company Rocket, The Singular Vision of Two Men. But is there another book you'd like to share with us that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are many in all fields of writing. But for me, a book which is not car-related in this instance, but if you want to read about the history of the United Kingdom since 1945, then you need to read the book called The Making of Modern Britain by Andrew Marr, who's a UK television journalist. Although it's not been updated since 2007 and therefore hasn't covered the world catastrophes since then, it explains well what the UK had to deal with over the previous 55 years and why it got into such a muddle over Brexit.
Oh, I'll have to get a copy of that. I would love to read that. Sounds very interesting. Listeners, I'll put a link to these books, including Clive's book, on his show notes page. Just go to carsyeah.com, type in Clive Neville, and you'll find links right there. And if you love automotive books, or if you'd love to get a great gift for yourself and for a buddy, a chap, buy 2 copies and send one off to a friend. They will love you for it. One sits on my shelf, and it's quite a delight. Fascinating history. All right, we're up to the checkered flag here, Clive. I'm going to ask you a rather fun question. It's the new year. We're into 2021, thank goodness. Take a breath, everybody. I'm going to buy you a very cool car, a collector car, or a motorbike. It could be either or, but there's a couple rules to my game, as my listeners know. You can't sell it and fund a new home, so if you pick a Ferrari GTO, you're stuck with it. Not a bad car to be stuck with. I want you to pick something, though, that ticks all the boxes. Something that you would enjoy and drive, take out in the countryside. But here's the hard part. It's the only one cool collector vehicle you can have. So it needs to kind of do a lot of things for you. So what's it going to be?
Well, you'll be pleased it's not my Talbot Samba.
Okay.
However, I'm not a great collector, and I have a passion for cars, but it's not for collecting them or things that are otherwise unattainable. And I'm not really interested in cars that are completely unusable in the real world. Mm-hmm. So that probably rules out supercars. But I am privileged currently to own a 1990s Honda NSX manual and a more recent BMW A8 Roadster. And in my view, both are spectacular vehicles and the pinnacle of engineering from their eras. Both were game changers, even if they weren't considered to be game changers by the general population at the time. Mm. But the NSX is certainly regarded now as a car of the 90s and changed the way that Ferrari did business. So I would have to have one of those, and they both exist in my garage now, so you don't have to buy me one.
Well, you're going to be a cheap date. I like that.
But what you have given me is the quandary of working out which one would I keep.
Yeah.
And I think it would have to be the NSX. And there's only one reason for that. And it's not the fact that it's got a lovely V6 engine. It's for the fact that I'm not going to get any nimbler in my old age, and I won't be able to get in and out of the i8.
Okay. Well,
Go.
Nice answer. I've had friends that have had those NSXs, wonderful cars. To me, when they came out, they were so extreme, and they were a bit hamstrung by the Honda name. Not that there's anything wrong with Hondas, because they make fantastic cars, but people just had a hard time relating the Honda brand to that. Kind of like when Volkswagen came out with their very high-end model. They were trying to compete with the high-end BMW, Mercedes, and people just couldn't get their heads around it, that VW emblem on the front. But if you've ever driven one, listeners, and I have, you'll understand what Clive is talking about. They are wonderful.
They are.
How long have you had yours?
It's my third. I had my first in 97. I've had this one since 2005.
Wow. Okay. She's a keeper. Well, I love it when my guests already have what they want, because that means you've hit the high time. You've hit the pinnacle of life. You have your dream car in your garage, and I'm very, very happy for that, Clive. You've taken us on a magnificent ride today, and thank you so much for spending some time with me. Always good to be across the pond in the UK. Before I let you go, would you offer us one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance before you drive off into the English countryside in that beautiful Honda NSX?
I would say, first of all, I repeat, don't get caught out, but enjoy it.
Yes.
Because it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. Yeah, and boy, did we learn that in 2020, and it seems to be continuing a little bit here into the new year. Is there a way for people to keep up with you? Do you play in the social media world, or are you kind of a retired quiet guy these days?
I'm quiet. I clearly there is in the back of my mind another book, and I have had discussions with BMW to write a book on the i8, and they've been very kind to help me with that. I don't have a Twitter or any form of hashtag, but if people want to get in touch with me, they can get in touch with me through Porter Press.
Porter Press, absolutely. I'll put a link to my friends at Porter Press. They do a magnificent job creating, publishing some of the most wonderful automotive books. I'll put a link to their website. You can go get this book. You can find any of the other books. They've been such great friends to me, and they introduced me to Clive, and that's pretty darn cool, so that we could have this talk today. Clive, welcome to the new year. Happy New Year, my friend. I wish you the best going forward, and I'll tell you what, when you write that next book, you call me up, and we'll have you back on the show, and we'll talk about that. How does that sound?
It sounds great, Mark. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
You're welcome. You've been so generous with your time. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road.
Bye-bye.
Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.